Namaste, this is Anvi Prabhu. Welcome back to the Anvi Prabhu Show. If you are a returning viewer, then you can see that yes, we have had a little bit of a rebrand. I hope to be bringing out much more regular episodes on my channel. I want to do more weekly content as well as more long form essays. So do stick around for that. And if you're new here, well, it's wonderful to have you here. Welcome to my channel, and I hope you do subscribe and stay around for the journey ahead. And also don't forget to press the notification icon so that you don't miss out on any of my future episodes. So there is a huge controversy happening in India right now, and it basically surrounds an adult joke that was told by a very influential YouTuber, podcaster, and that has literally taken the country by storm. And initially, I was a bit hesitant to talk about this because I thought, it was just one of those things that would eventually die down. But it has not died down, and in fact, it has actually gotten worse. There is a lot to unpack in this, not just about the controversy itself, but what it means for freedom of expression and speech for our society as a whole, and a lot of other things as well. So this controversy basically surrounds a show on YouTube called India's Got Latent, and Ranveer Allahbadia, who is one of the largest YouTubers of India, along with a couple of other YouTubers and influencers. So in a nutshell, Ranveer, who is not a comedian, went on this reality show, which is also not an original show concept, but lifted from a Western show called Kill Tony. And basically the premise of the show itself is to be as edgy as possible and to outdo the others. Now, I personally haven't watched any of the episodes of this show, and this is the first time I actually got to know about this show. So I cannot really judge how bad the previous episodes were as compared to the one that has now blown up and caused this controversy. So basically, the jokes here are taken to the highest level of cringe and discomfort as possible, and every person is basically trying to outdo the other. So Ranveer made a comment which can be universally agreed to be pathetic and disgusting and not in good taste. And so did a few of the other contestants as well. They are all now being hounded by people on social media, and not just that, also by politicians and large media houses.
With an update coming in on popular podcaster Ranveer Allahbadia, known for his channel Beer Biceps. He's been facing the wrath of the internet after he recently joined Samay Raina's India's Got Latent as a panelist.
So Beer Biceps is in a free fall. Ranveer Allahbadia went from being the disruptor of the year to disrupting his own career in record time.
हमारे समाज में हमने अश्लीलता के भी कुछ नियम तैयार किए हैं. अगर उनको कोई पार करता है तो बहुत गलत बात है.
I think one point which is important to remember here is that this is an adult show and it can only be accessed by paying a membership. Samay Raina, who's the founder of the show and the host of the show, has now come out and said that he's basically taken out and deleted all of the episodes. Now, coming to the joke or the comment as well that Ranveer made, that itself is also not an original comment. It can be seen and heard in various other shows. Take a look.
Watch your parents have sex every day for the rest of your life.
क्या हो गया रणवीर भाई को? अपने अपने पकड़ लीजिए तुरंत.
Or would you join in once and stop it forever?
Okay, would you rather watch your parents have sex every day for the rest of your life, or join in once to stop it?
A couple of days earlier, Ranveer Allahbadia also came on his Instagram and he published an apology video where he's basically saying that it was not in good taste, and he's also agreeing that he's not a comedian as such, so he cannot really judge. Comedy or humor is not his forte, and it was a misjudgment on his part, which he has agreed to. Now, coming to the genre of dark humor itself. Dark humor, as the name suggests, it is supposed to be humor and comedy that is done on various stuff which might otherwise be considered as sensitive in society. And also the whole premise of the show itself was adult content targeted to an adult audience. So in a nutshell, this is basically what has happened. Now, coming to the points that I personally want to raise on this. The first point I want to talk about is this blurring of public space and private space. Now, with the advent of social media, this space between what is considered as private and what is considered as public has extremely blurred. I mean, previously the conversations that you would have with probably like a group of 4 people or maybe maximum 10 people or 15 people or friends or family, it now includes potentially an audience from around the world. And of course, it's not a new thing also, because every vlogger who vlogs shows his personal life. A lot of other influencers and YouTubers and Instagrammers show their day-to-day life, their mundane activities, which otherwise might be considered boring, but because it is social media, there is a huge audience for that. And people can also earn a living through this. So, and it's not just about day-to-day activities, but also people's most intimate thoughts, their most intimate feelings, which probably in the past they might have written in their diary and not show to anybody else, is now on every other Instagram reel and YouTube short or what you may. Now, of course, I'm not interested in judging whether all this is morally right or wrong, but I'm just stating a matter of fact as to where we stand in society today when it comes to all of this. And obviously, the things that we see are also carefully curated in most cases. And when this happens, I think a lot of other questions come up as to how exactly would you define authenticity? How exactly would you define entertainment? How exactly would you define value in terms of what is seen on social media, what is put out, and what we get from it? And also, how exactly would you define talent? How exactly would you define comedy? How would you define art, if for that matter? It is an attention economy, of course, and potentially with thousands and millions of views that we might get, we are almost ready to do anything and everything to get those likes and views and obviously that bag of money. So yes, social media has completely redefined what it means to be part of a community. And this is not just a case of India. Obviously, this is what is happening the world over. And when this happens, we are sometimes confused about this. Public space, private space. How would you define it? How and where would you draw that boundary? The second point that comes to my mind is about freedom of expression. Now, I'm someone who believes that absolute freedom of expression and speech is what justifies the dignity of being a human being, and that is what I would strive to see in our society at some point. But when you look at specific cases like this, you do wonder about the connotations and the implications of what this would mean. And again, who exactly is going to define what is okay and what is not okay to be put on social media? Who would define and draw those boundaries that the rest of us would have to adhere to? What incident is worthy of an outrage on the scale, and what incident is just to be merely laughed at and forgotten and brushed under the carpet? When it comes to this particular case, again, I think it is universally acceptable that it is not in good taste, it is crass. We have to remember the context that this is a show which is for adults, targeted at an adult audience. When I initially saw the outrage against this, I was like, okay, sure, if I am to talk about freedom of speech for one person to say something, then obviously, yes, there is this freedom for the others to either criticize it, to comment on it, to maybe even unfollow the person that they disagree with. And I thought it was just one of those things which would, after 3 days of outrage, it would eventually die down. But it has not. A lot of FIRs have been filed against not just Ranveer, but the other YouTubers and social media influencers who were there. What happens with social media influencers is that we are so used to seeing a very curated version of them on social media. We see bits and pieces of what they choose to show us that we oftentimes forget that they are human at the end of the day and that they have their own space to and make mistakes. We watch their carefully curated content, even though they are talking about mundane personal things. We watch them probably for 2 hours or 3 hours and then we move on with our lives. But we forget that there is a lot that happens beyond those 2 to 3 hours as well in their lives. Now, none of this, of course, makes what he said justifiable, because again, we also have to remember the society and the cultural context. Probably in a Western society, in a Western country, this might have passed off and people would have been chill. But because this is India and people are culturally sensitive, and sometimes, if I may say, unnecessarily so, this huge uproar is just not stopping. And talking about curated personalities, Ranveer is somebody who is known for his podcasts on spiritual topics, a lot of culture-oriented topics and all of that. For somebody like that to speak something like this is obviously something that people found extremely jarring. Now, if I was in his place, I think, keeping in mind my brand image, this is probably not a show that I would have gone to if I was in his place. But to each to his own. I guess it's all about how much of visibility you can create for yourself and how much you can be seen by going to different shows and, different events and whatever. So I guess that is why he went there, and unfortunately it has ended up in this state now. Now, it's very easy for all of us to sit here after an event has occurred and talk about why it should not have happened, what that specific person should have done, could have done, would have done, blah, blah, blah. But again, I'm not going to sit here and talk about that because I think it's not going to lead us anywhere. But the fact that he has come out with an apology video, and I think this was put out 2-3 days ago, it should speak for itself. But I also do want to ask to people who are still outraging against this, sure, you have the freedom to criticize it and not like it and express your distaste. But to what extent can you drag on that sense of hatred? Because if we as a society can be this intolerant to a remark, no matter how disgusting it is, then why is there no such outrage for the other disgusting things that happen in society? Now, you might say that those are different things and this is a different thing. Sure, of course, they are different things, but I personally do not understand the scale to which this has blown up, and which is why I'm questioning, why is it that we don't have this level of outrage for the other disgusting things in society which have a worse impact on people? Why is there no outrage against pornography, which is so readily available? I mean, you don't even have to go to that extreme example. Go to any of the Instagram accounts. It's, my gosh, the amount of soft porn content that is there, that is being put out on a day-to-day basis. How is that justified? And even if you scroll down, the comment section of any of the Instagram accounts of any of the girls, and yes, I am talking not about any Western accounts, but I'm talking about accounts from Indian creators, the kind of content that is seen that has millions of views, and the kind of comments that are there in that. So if we are to go and start registering FIRs for crude remarks on an adult show, to what extent are we ready to go down this road? Where do we draw the line? And of course, this is not the first time that this has happened. A lot of other stand-up comics have come under fire previously. The more I think about this, the more I feel that probably the only instance where I would have agreed on somebody being on a show being cancelled or something is where the remarks were based on religion or race or something like that. I guess in a very idealized and in a utopian world, I would not. I think all the people in the world would have the maturity to laugh at something and then move on with their lives and not take anything seriously. But given the society we live in today, I guess that probably would be the only instance where I would say that, cancelling a show or not wanting to hear a particular stand-up comic or an artist would be where there is specific targeting of a religion or a race or an ethnicity or whatever that may be. Because in today's world, we see that that only happens to selective groups and not to all groups, which is why I said that in an idealized world, either you have the freedom to criticize and comment on all communities, or you do not have the freedom to comment on any of the communities. The last point I want to talk about is that of culture. It is a very deep word, I know, with a lot of connotations, and I think it is impossible to have a really deep and in-depth conversation and debate on that topic in this particular video. But just to point out, all of these people, the politicians and the media houses who are now taking this supposedly moral high ground and, saying that it is absolutely unjustifiable that it is happening in Indian culture, that these kind of remarks are being told in Indian culture. Every single one of them has been guilty of uttering disgusting comments in the past. So how does that justify this outrage? If it came from somebody who has never uttered a single bad word in his mouth in his life, then sure, maybe you can take a minute to listen to that person. But taking this moral high ground just to prove a point, just to show that you are somehow high and mighty, I don't think that's going to do you any good or do anybody else any good. Sure, criticize the person, talk about what it actually means for the current generation that is growing up in India, what it means for the access of social media to the younger generation. Those are all valid points. But again, to take an unnecessarily high moral ground to put down somebody else while you are guilty of the very same thing, come on, make it make sense. I really wish this kind of outrage was shown in other instances in society as well, where it has proven to be more harmful, more violent for the people involved than just a mere comment spoken. So coming back to my point on freedom of expression, again, who's gonna decide on the yardstick of what is decent and what is not? To an extent, yes, it is the culture of a particular country or a society or a community that decides that. But in a world that is increasingly becoming digital, that is increasingly becoming globalized, I think again we have a really big question in front of us to answer, and answer sensibly. It isn't just about the show being cancelled, all the episodes being deleted, and the FIRs being, registered not just in one place but in several states in India. The matter has now become so extreme that unfortunately Ranveer and the other people are now getting death threats. This is what he says on his Instagram. My team and I are cooperating with the police and all other authorities. I will follow due process and be available to all the agencies. My remark about parents was insensitive and disrespectful. It is my moral responsibility to do better, and I am genuinely sorry. I am watching death threats pour in from people saying that they want to kill me and hurt my family. People have invaded my mother's clinic posing as patients. I am feeling scared and I don't know what to do. But I'm not running away. I have full faith in the police and the judicial system of India. I think this is where it has the chance of being a very dangerous precedent set, and I don't want it to become that. And also, if you look at some of the comments of the people, the hate comments, they are even more viler and unjustifiable. So you want to combat vulgarity using vulgarity? You want to put an end to vulgarity and indecency by legislating it? I honestly don't think people realize how dangerous this is, because today it is these 2 or 3 people involved. Tomorrow it could be you and I. Being held accountable as social media influencers and public figures is different, but the level of outrage and hatred that a society or a community is capable of, which is in no way balances the incident itself, that is what is really, really bothersome. At this point, it literally feels like people just need a reason to outrage, and that's all. The last point I want to talk about is, I saw a lot of people also talking about how this was going to be a very bad influence on the kids. And my first question is, why exactly are kids given access to internet? It is the responsibility of the parents. In a generation where kids as small as 4 years and 5 years are, given iPads and phones and whatnot, you cannot go and complain that, something is having a bad influence on your kids. Well, it is your duty to regulate the amount of internet that they use. It is your duty to regulate that your kids are not being exposed to these. Where are your responsibilities hanging out then? This is nothing but mob mentality translated onto the digital landscape, and it's unfortunate that people don't realize what a dangerous precedent they are setting, not for anybody else but for themselves. Censorship is much, much more dangerous to society than freedom of speech. And I hope that larger parts of the society will realize this sooner rather than later. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are and what your opinions are. I would love for you to join the conversation. Until next time, take care.